I wanted to give a chance to talk. This is kind of a segment that we're going to try to introduce pretty much to every nerd log, where we take a little time to talk to someone from the DevRel team about kind of what you're working on and what's been interesting to you this week. The first one is, you mentioned that you were kind of poking at some issues with the Ruby agent that are sort of not the core things that the Ruby agent team is working on. And something that just sort of occurred to me that I would love to get the answer to is like, you know, New Relic, and I'm sure you know this piece of trivia. For years, the URL for the actual dashboards was rpm.newrelic.com, and that stood for Rails Performance Management. Yep. So, when I was doing test support New Relic, we covered, I think, 6 languages at the time, a bunch of other technologies. We were launching in mobile and all this stuff, but was still Rails Performance Management. And so, obviously, we have a long history in our connection to Rails. So, something I was curious about then, I'm certainly curious about now, is like, what is an agent team that has an agent that's been out for all these years? What do they do all day? Like, what is hey, this is top of mind as what we need to do on the agent team?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because, if you go to the New Relic agent on like GitHub and you look at the history and you go scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll find the very first commits that Lucerne ever did. I mean, that's basically the beginning of the company. Scroll all the way down, and there it is in that Ruby agent. And so, the Ruby agent is specifically the automated performance monitoring package for Ruby programs. Mostly Rails, but you can use it for other things.
Yeah, I never looked into whether it was actually supposed to be Ruby Performance Management or Rails Performance Management.
But I'm pretty sure it was originally Rails, but and what it is it's just the package that if you have a Rails app and you go and you include this thing into your Rails app and you have a very small amount of configuration, it only takes a few lines, and the built-in tools will actually generate that configuration for you, then boom, your Rails app is getting monitored by New Relic, and all of the various performance metrics are getting sent back, and you don't have to do anything else.
Yeah, and at the time, this felt so revelatory. I mean, and I think, frankly, for a new generation of developers, it still feels revelatory when it's working right. Is not just, hey, you're slow for some users, hey, you're 20% slower for these users than those users. Not just, hey, you're slow for users in Germany, but you're slow for these users. On average, this is how slow you are. And that method you wrote that was called, find all users who need tacos, that's what's taking so long.
Yep.
And it takes this long, and when it runs the slowest, it has these parameters. And you didn't have to set any of that up, right? You didn't have to tell it about your function names or anything.
And I think that's the real magic to it, is that you don't, I mean, there are an enormous number of controls and knobs that you can twiddle to fine tune this thing. But fundamentally, you don't have to do anything to get it to work. And in general, it should work with pretty much any Rails app. I mean, there's always corner cases, and there's always, this version has this issue and that version has that issue, type of things that come up. And that's actually a lot of part of what consumes the Ruby agent team's time, is dealing with that kind of stuff. But in general,
I think
you install it and run it, and you install it into your project, and then you've got monitoring. And if you're using Faraday or you're using various other libraries in your app, it will just integrate with them and work.
Yeah, this is the thing I try to explain, that there are some clever tricks out there, and in fact, the Pixie project for monitoring Kubernetes uses a system called eBPF to give really deep data kind of automatically. Like, it's kind of fascinating. Like, it gives you a bunch of like process IDs and stuff, so you kind of have to interpret that. But still, it's very impressive how much it does kind of automatically. But one of the things I try to relate, and often, frankly, times being what they are, I'm talking about Node.js and not about Rails, but equally applicable, is the reality, though, is when you go and install some package, when you grab some gem and say, hey, this is what I want to use in my system, and the New Relic agent says, oh, I see you're using that, and I see it's timing like this, and when it kicks off this method, that's when it's returning. So I'll call, the request timing between these two. I'll see that the request returning. That is, there's no single magic trick to that. That was not a weekend hackathon thing. it is actually that, we see that people are using this library. We go in and examine the library to say, okay, what counts as a response being generated here, and therefore what do we want our agent to like see and do.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things I always try to explain is, we do have open source agents out, and you can go and take a look at them. And one of the things you'll really, really see is it is not a weekend project to do that kind of instrumentation. It's not a 3-month project, right? And so, yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? It's like, what do people work on every day? Well, it's great to go look at the most recent libraries and say, hey, let's go and instrument these. But not only are they being updated, but then older versions are still out there, right? Older versions of Rails are still out there.
They have to maintain backwards compatibility, and the Ruby agent maintains a significant amount of backwards compatibility. Like, actually, there's an issue opened right now. They're finally removing MERB support, and you have to have been around in the Rails ecosystem for a long time probably to even know what MERB is.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's pretty significant that the agent has gone this many years still supporting MERB when MERB hasn't itself existed for a decade, somewhere in that vicinity.
Wow. So like you cannot go get that. You can't go download the gem for it currently. Like,
I don't think so. I mean, unless someone is just sort of quietly maintaining some fork somewhere, I don't think so. Yeah.
For Node.js fans, this would be like left pad still being around. That's kind of a joke, but yeah, there are things that get pulled down. Very, very famously in the Node.js community, a single developer got into it with NPM, and you heard about this.
Yeah, I remember it.
But yeah, there are libraries that are, that get relisted as deprecated, or Lodash right now is experiencing vulnerabilities and a lot of people are pulling it out. And so, but the reality is, I mean, Node is frankly at the same point of maturity that Rails was 5 years ago, where you now do have people running completely private repositories so that they can use some very, very old libraries because that's what works on their system.
Yep.
And so, and I'll be honest with you, when you're a new developer, you're like, oh, you should update and do all this stuff and update. And I would say, the thing is that this old version is making money now. Like checks continue to be cashed based on this code. So your desire to have the most recent version and the newest version and everything is like, well, it makes money now. So there's very often a very, very strong motivator to not do those updates and keep this stuff around.
Yep. Don't break it if it works.
Yeah. So then you had been looking into, like, do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about crystal language? I'd actually be curious about that too.
Yeah. I'm game for anything. As far as like the things that I've been doing with the Ruby agent, it's just one of those things that so like. We were talking about open source earlier, and New Relic has open sourced a lot of stuff, and one of the things that's open sourced is the Ruby agent, and so all of the development and all of the work on that Ruby agent happens in the open on GitHub, and there's always a long list of issues that are there to be tackled, and so sometimes I will just go to that issue list and see if there's something there that the team within New Relic that maintains that agent hasn't had the time to get to, or it just hasn't gotten attention. And I will go and I will find something and I'll just say, let's work on that. Let's go see if we can fix that for them. And so in the last few months I've gotten a few PRs in. Actually, if Creature Next is still out there in the chat, he and I have one that we're working on jointly together on the Ruby agent.
Oh my God, Danny, that's great. I love that.
He's Oscar. Danny's.
Oh my gosh, Oscar, I've been calling you Danny all day. Oh no. Oh, I want to go back. I want to be a baby. Kill it. Dump the segment. I want to be clear that Oscar is my student in Bit Project, and we talk every week. So that's how bad this is.
He said that Danny was in the chat, and then your brain just grabbed that word, and
I've been stuck on it. Stuck on it. Yeah.
Yep.
But
so Oscar and I are working on a PR right now, for it. But this, I want to emphasize that this is something that really, because it's in the open for a reason.
Yeah,
And so anybody can go in and anybody can say, oh, there's this issue here, and I can fix that. Let me go see if
yeah.
I can fix that.
And
Um,
I also think it is this kind of this argument I was talking about for open source earlier, which is sometimes you open source to say, which is sort of the main thing for us is to say, hey, go, we'll show you how to gather data with open source tools. When you want to maintain and query that data, we're here with a service to do that. We don't charge you to download the agent or anything for very
yep.
solid reasons. The other part of it is to say, and this is maybe, this is not a key goal, but it is part of it, is to say, hey, if you want to try writing this yourself or maintaining this yourself, look at the
Yeah.
issue list. And, if you say, hey, I want to make our own in-house version of the agent, or I want to make an agent for, language that's supported, it will give you a sense of the complexity involved, right? Where of course, you're trying to time everything without, just to say it, without hitting the Heisenberg uncertainty principle that to actually observe this, you have to completely tank its performance
Yep.
and quintuple the time it takes for every request to execute.
Yeah, I mean the Ruby agent right now has 14,787 commits on it. There's been a little bit of work put in,
Yeah,
a few man hours,
yeah.
just a few. Yeah, but yeah, so I've been doing a lot of work with that, and one of the things, that you sort of hinted at is that one of the things that I've been kind of laying some groundwork for, just privately, that I'm going to start working on in the open, is that, just like what you said, implementing a APM agent for an unsupported language. I have been laying the groundwork to start working on a new Relic agent for the Crystal language, publicly, like in the open. And so we'll be, making that a regular part of my content that I produce, and gonna see if we can get something viable, and
Oh,
something that maybe gets enough other community interest that I'm not the only one supporting it, because it is a very big thing to support an APM library of any significance.
so normally I get, I try to be well prepared for each show, but I have never heard of the Crystal language,
Yeah.
so I want to hear about that.
So here, I will actually screen share. Let's see if this works to screen share while I'm producing. But here we
Oh
go.
yeah, let me make sure. Let me check the
Nope, that does not work. That
that
broke things badly.
that doesn't actually. You know what? Just grab a link to the repository and we'll drop it in the
Yeah.
Twitch chat so people can follow along there if they'd
And
like.
actually, I think it broke things badly enough that OBS just lost track of the Zoom
Oh
window.
yeah, no, we're we're
So
we're completely invisible.
so 1 second while I um, help OBS find our window again.
Okay, we've been cast to the shadow realm. Save us, Superman. Our time
There
has
we
been
go.
served. We've got. Oh, we're back. We're back.
Yep.
We're back.
Yep.
Love it. Okay.
OBS just isn't always so smart about these things.
Yeah.
So,
No.
okay. So I
Literally
can't.
changing anything I've always found is
Yeah.
just
Yep.
it's just very rough on OBS. So we dropped the repository link.
Yeah.
I know we were looking over at GitHub in
Yeah.
the Twitch chat.
Well, so here I will drop two things here. Um, hey, Carmen. I just saw in the chat Carmen dropped in and waved.
Yeah. Hi, Carmen.
So here is I dropped into the chat the URL for the New Relic Ruby agent. If anybody wants to take a look at that and just kind of see what's involved in a very comprehensive agent, look at what kind of issues there are that pop up on something like this. And if you're really curious, go into that history log and scroll down to the bottom of it. It's kind of interesting to see Lucern's name there on some commits.
Yeah.
But yeah, Crystal. So Crystal is an interesting language. It got its origin in 2013, something like that. And it was actually implemented using Ruby. And basically what it is it's a language that has a syntax that is very Ruby inspired. I mean,
Hmm.
by and large, Crystal looks like Ruby. Um,
Yeah.
but it's built on top of the LLVM and it's compiled. So there are a few things that are different. It's statically type checked. It runs very fast. Um, there are a few things about it that are just a little bit different than Ruby, but it has a lot of Ruby's ergonomics as far as from a developer coming in and using the language. It really does feel a lot like you're using Ruby, with a lot of the same ease of prototyping things very quickly and that sort of thing. It's just that it's a compiled, statically type checked language that is really very, very fast.
Yeah. So this is the two of the issues that I know for Ruby. And God, I feel insane being like I'm going to talk about Ruby. I'm gonna expound on Ruby while Kirk's the guest. But the two of the big issues I am aware of is without using static type checking, you're implicitly going to hit some performance issues, and then you're also going to have issues where not having static type checking, and this is why we see like Rust coming back now, or getting big now, is that kind of more strict requirement and throwing of errors when you say,
Yeah.
hey, you're not telling me what type you have, or you suddenly change types. It seems easier at first. It seems easier at first to have dynamic typing. Obviously, it's easier to get your code working, but in general, that kind of dynamic typing usually, when it is doing that, is not great. So to say, the way that JavaScript has is saying, oh, well, you must have meant to give me a string that's the number 6.
Yeah.
And then in a minute, oh, you must have meant to change it into, an integer. So I'll change it, and make some very unexpected results. A lot of people are realizing, well, it just would have been better if I just got an error the first time I messed this up when I
Yeah.
put the 6 in quotes.
And so
So
see, Ruby has added static type checking to it as of version 3.
yeah,
There's a system called RBS that you can use to add static type checking to your Ruby programs. It's
yeah,
not I guess the way to phrase it, it's not a mandatory thing, it's an
yeah,
optional thing, and you can add it incrementally. So you can add that same sort of type checking to your Ruby programs, and it really is very, very useful anytime you're writing anything that's very big. Even so the argument, we're kind of diverging into an argument on testing and
yeah,
type checking, but the argument is that if you have adequate testing of your software, your tests will find the problems that can come up from, oops, I messed up my typing. And that's
yeah,
true, but it's also one of those things that in a lot of cases, your type checker can do the job for you and can do it
yeah,
faster, and in a lot of cases can do it better. And
yeah.
so,
There is a shop whose name I will not mention, where I said, hey, we have a bunch of language teams for making, I don't know, let's call it language agents. Let's say the company's name rhymes with Blue Relic. And at the time, this is way back in the day, every team had a QA,
yep,
person or people. And the Ruby people were like, no, that's not necessary because our language does not require QA. And that was not a good year for delivering. So we want to have systems that are the point of this is sort of no tool is immune from a human process, producing
yeah,
not working components. So I just think it's a question of, does it make sense for your shop to do it this way? And there's tons of people in both the front end JavaScript community and the Node community. They're implementing tools that say, yeah, this is going to add in rigid type check or static type
yep.
checking because we find that yes, testing should have covered it, and yes, this warning system should have covered it, but it's not actually working, and we're just going to impose that in from the top.
I mean, I've found I've taken some software that have previously written in Ruby, and some of it had been running in various forms of production for more than a decade.
Yeah,
And I re-implemented it in Crystal and was like, oh, there's a bug, and there's a bug, and there's a bug, and there's a bug, and there's a bug that I didn't know about because, you know,
yeah,
it worked well enough. But, just the static type checking said, oh, there it is. And I'm sure that if I took that same software and I implemented, went through and put in all of the type checking with RBS for Ruby 3, it would also highlight those same errors. But
Yeah, if you
that's
want to
one
know
of the
how
advantages
far
of static checking.
if you want to know how far type checking can go to bite you, there's I believe it's still in the wild where if you name a Wi-Fi network a certain name and you just open the list of open Wi-Fi networks on an iPhone, your Wi-Fi will stop working and never work again on that iPhone until you like reinstall the operating system because um, it feeds in like a system variable on in Swift, which causes it to memory overrun, and the whatever that like Slayer program that
Hmm.
comes in and says, "Hey, it's memory overrunning," will kill the Wi-Fi application permanently. So it'll keep trying to reload this as like in
Yeah.
recent and that obviously like that's type checking, right? Like it's like, hey, this is should have been type string and it's being handled as a system variable, like. And I will tell you, Apple has great QA. So this is just one of those things that if you don't have it, you need to have a plan for when it does get out in the wild. You don't need to just say, well, QA will always catch it or automated testing will always catch it, right? That's
Yep.
just the reality. So, but sort of where is Crystal as far as an ecosystem? Are people building like production apps on
Yeah.
it? Is it
So
more of a demonstration of
yeah.
how
No.
cool
So
it is?
so Crystal. See, I first learned about Crystal at Ruby Kaigi, if I remember correctly, like in 2015, something like that. And at the time, it was very much a very young sort of. I mean, it was still several years old by then, but it was a young language. A lot of things were in development with it, and I looked at it and thought, "Oh, that's cool," and then didn't look at it again
Mm-hmm.
until last year when I dropped back in and discovered that, oh, hey, this has become really um, mature enough to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, it has gone to its 1.0 release, and it's actually now at 1.1.1. The core team is committed to doing a release every 3 months. So it's reached the point where the core team has said, yes, this is production ready, and um, there are people that are using it in production in the wild on their systems. In some cases, they've taken Rails apps and they've ported it over. In some cases, it's you know development that started fresh from Crystal right up, but it is in the wild and in production right now. And that's one of the reasons why I was I was thinking, I was working with APM systems and working with Crystal internals and things like that. And, I thought, it's reached the point where there's growing utilization and growing interest. And it just seems like a fun project to bring New Relic to
Yeah.
that platform, bring New Relic to the web frameworks that people are currently using in Crystal to build these applications. And so I thought that'll be a fun project. That'll be an interesting project, both from the point of view of really getting deep into how New Relic. Losing my voice a little. I haven't taken my allergy medicine yet today.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yesterday I was filming video and I kept drinking. I took like four of these like LaCroix, and I was
uh-huh.
like, "Oh, this is awesome. We're filming video. It's kind of important." And I am just gassy as all heck. Just good work. Great work, Nika. Great planning.
Yeah, yeah. Allergy medicine. It's important,
Yeah.
but yeah. It's just getting deep into how New Relic actually works, how New Relic
Hmm.
talks to transfers data and things like that, as well as details in how an APM agent works. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I started on New Relic support, and I occasionally will still talk to people who are like they're now doing New Relic support, and they're like, "Hey, I want to move into development," and they often, they work in the same building as New Relic development, so they're like, "Hey, I want to move into the same company," and we've had some people do that, and that's fantastic. I really really like that move. I also want to say to people, if you get to looking what the agent teams do, and you start to feel stupid and like you don't not like cut out to be a developer, I would say like, it what an agent does is really some pretty complex thinking about the way that programming works. And so, this is kind of inside baseball, but I have encouraged people like go look at what kind of studio developers are doing, or what sort of standard
Hmm.
e-commerce developers are doing. If you love thinking about computer science stuff, then yes, of course, like come work at New Relic and let's get excited about it, or come work in SRE or DevOps or all these other things where you can use those frontline tools. When you start saying like, hey, I want to just sort of start messing with the agent or try to make my own agent, you really have to do some thinking about the nature of programming, and it may be helpful to have done programming full time for a couple of years and then be doing that rather than saying, I want to go from, helping people configure and set up their systems with a product I understand to like truly thinking about what is the nature of like a function call, what is the
Hmm.
nature of recursion, what is the nature of like stack understanding. These are big ideas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, one of the things that the agents have to do is they have to work very, very carefully with the internals of everything they're tying into, because they can't change how
Yeah,
anything works. I mean,
yeah,
the agent has to it's not quantum mechanics.
yeah,
Observation can't change the result.
yeah.
So, the agent has to tie into all this stuff and observe all this stuff without actually changing how any of it works in the end. And
Yeah, you
that's
would
the
think
tricky
that the
part.
nightmare is that you're affecting performance, that you're making everything run more slowly. But of course, that's not the nightmare. The nightmare is that you're changing what the database returns,
Yeah.
right? Like if you change any of that by one iota due to some, obviously not, direct intentionally, but due to the side effect of what you're doing, right? You really got to take a step back, right?
Yep.
And of course, there are ways to feel strategically that you're really ensuring that you're not doing that, right? So like simple wrapping where you're saying, my library is now getting and returning everything, right? These require some thought before you dive into them. I'm getting pretty abstract here, but yeah, that's the real nightmare. Is you have to make sure you are changing nothing about what is returned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, I love this. I want people to go check out Crystal, and we'll put links to the Crystal language down in the show notes. Is there other stuff you want to share? You have like a call to action with stuff we want people to do. I mean, check out the Nerd Log on Thursdays if you're
Yeah.
watching.
You know, um, I don't really have a specific call to action at this point in time. It's just one of those things that, if there's anything that you're interested in with regard to Ruby or Crystal, um, you know, hit me up. Let me know what you're interested in. I try to also, post. Our development relations team has a forum instance that we post a lot of content to, and I'm
Mm.
constantly writing and publishing articles on various things. It's therelicans.com. And if there's anything that anybody out there would love to actually see an article on, hit me up, email me, because I'm always open to ideas. I
Yeah, I love that. And I'd say I dropped the link to the Relicans. I dropped the link to my Twitter. If you are interested in making a commit to one of the agents and you would like help finding maybe an issue that looks good or whatever else, hey, DM me on Twitter
Yep.
because we're really happy to, even if you're a beginner and it does feel like a lot, we want people to get those first commits. So hit us up there. Hit me up on Twitter or come find us on the Relicans, and we can definitely like if you're willing to put the time in and do that exploration, we can find somebody within the New Relic org who's very happy to talk to you about that.
Yep, and I just dropped mine into the
Oh
chat
yeah,
as
thank
well.
you so
I'm
much.
I'm I'm WY Haines pretty much everywhere. So yeah, if you want to come chat, hit me up on Twitter. Um, I'm always there.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We tried a little different format. I loved it. This is really really fun to get to just talk about development stuff and talk about dev ideas. It's really, really fun for me. So we're gonna be doing this more. We're gonna end, I think, every show with a chat with DevRel people because
That'll be
this really
awesome.
worked for me. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Again, do check out the Nerd Log on Thursdays. Go over follow me at serverless_mom on Twitter. Serverless mom is no more. Serverless_mom for life. Follow us on Twitch at Twitch new_relic. Hey, underscores. They're everywhere. Thanks everybody, and have a great. You know what? Start your weekend now. You know, if you're not a sober person, if you're not struggling with sobriety, go open a light beer now. It's already 10:30 in the morning on a Thursday. Just call it.
Hey,
Just call it.
in Europe, it's like evening now, so.
Yeah, in Europe it's evening, and in Europe it's almost August when nobody's working. So come on. I saw an article about how a bunch of Americans quietly stopped working on Fridays, And that has also been my experience. Friday is what I use for like bigger stuff, or I'll work long days the rest of the week. And I'm like, yeah, we need to talk about this, because we're all coming back, and I think, we need to make some decisions about, where work and life should separate. All right, well, thank you so much, everybody.
Yep.
Love you lots, and yeah, see you next Thursday.
Thank you, everyone.